Hey, what up y'all? Mr. Cruz here, your friendly neighborhood producer, back with another video. And in today's video, I'm gonna go over my first year using FL Studio. Let's go. If I haven't said it enough, I started out making beats using Reason. Reason was a program that I initially started making beats on because I had kind of gotten it for free via a friend. Not that it was bootleg or anything, or it was a cracked version, but he hooked me up. So I had used Reason for years, and at one point in time, I switched over to Logic because I had switched over to Mac. And once I had a MacBook, obviously, it comes with GarageBand for free. So I was experimenting in GarageBand for a little bit, but then I switched over to Logic. Eventually, I realized that I was not too comfortable in Logic, that I was able to make beats a lot quicker in Reason because I knew Reason so well inside and out. However, a big problem that I continually kept running into with Reason was that there's very limited tutorials out there for hip hop content, for how to make hip hop beats, or like making hip hop trap beats and all this other stuff. Reason really isn't a DAW that was geared towards hip hop. It's really geared towards like EDM, house, techno, dubstep, all like the super nerdy music. I'm just joking, I'm a big fan of dubstep. And when FL came along and my ear was tuned towards FL and I heard a lot of things about it, honestly, when I started making beats, FL was a joke. It was a really cheap program. Nobody was using it, and people who were using it were making like really trash beats. But over time, obviously, like FL kind of grew in its following, and I think it's really for two big reasons. One was that it was extremely cheap. So for about $200 or less than $200, you could get yourself started on making beats in FL Studio. And FL Studio, that version of FL, would give you pretty much everything that you need in order to get started. And the other thing was that because it was so cheap, it was really easily accessible. A lot of people were creating content for it. So for somebody like me, who, even though I have been making beats for a long time, obviously I want to try out different genres, and I want to mess around with a little bit of lo-fi. I want to mess around with a little bit of R&B. So when I would go searching for that stuff, I would oftentimes be bombarded with content for FL regarding that type of genre, those type of contents, or that kind of tricks or whatever. So last year I took the dive. I switched from Reason and I went over to FL, and this is kind of my thoughts on FL as a DAW and how it kind of compares to other DAWs that I've used in the past. I've used Pro Tools, Logic, GarageBand, and Reason. And also, like, I kind of can't complain about free updates for life, because every couple of years I was paying like $150, $200 to get the latest version of Reason. But with FL, you get free updates for life. For life. But as far as my transition over into FL, I will say this: the learning curve was really steep. I will say that FL is built unlike any other DAW that I have used. And again, that's going to Pro Tools, Logic, and Reason. Even when I went from Reason to Logic, it wasn't that hard of a transition, because a lot of the elements and a lot of the ways that you use Reason, it's very present in Logic. So what I really realized is that a lot of these DAWs adopt very similar systems or very similar tactics and strategies on how you build out certain things. So for example, like in FL, like I have FL open back here as a beat that I had made previously. Like when it comes to regions, so like literally creating, like, let's say this splash region, bam, right? Like creating something like that, in FL, it is very different than in any other DAW that I've experienced. In FL, it's very different than in any other DAW that I've used. So for example, let's say if I have this splash one, and then let's say here I want the splash to hit 2 times. So I want it to hit 2 times right here, right? So let's say I wanted to do something like that, but I only wanted it to do in this one. But you notice every single one that's labeled splash has now added that second one. So in FL, that's like the norm, but in other DAWs, it's completely different. Like if I were to create a second region, and then I had that second region having, or the second playlist in FL it's called, and in that second playlist I had it hitting 2 times, then only that second one that I created would have it hitting 2 times. But in FL, it like when you create one playlist or one region, that one region, no matter how many times you use it, whatever changes you make is going to make that same change to all of them, which can be good and it can be bad. That's kind of what I mean by when I say there was a steep learning curve in how to create things in FL, I would say it probably took me a good maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks before I really, actually no, it probably took me like close to 3 weeks for me to kind of fully learn and fully feel comfortable with FL and the way that you kind of create inside of it. That's one of the cons about FL that I was not too big of a fan of. Also, I don't like how like you automatically have like a whole bunch of tracks built out that I can't delete. I can't get rid of those. Not that it's a super big inconvenience, it's just kind of a minor inconvenience because I like to keep my visually, like I like to keep my sequencer or the playlist window, I want to keep it nice, neat, and organized, and I only want to have stuff in there that I'm definitely using. So when I scroll down and I see like a whole bunch of tracks that I'm not using that I can't delete, I mean, I guess I could delete them, but that's a lot to delete. I'm not gonna do that. The other thing that I kind of did not like was also the mixer channel, because again, with the mixer channel, you also get 100 and some odd tracks that like you can't delete them. They're automatically there. Now, I don't think that impedes on the processing capabilities. I don't think it like sucks out a bunch of memory from your computer or from whatever you're using. It's just annoying, I guess. And the other thing that I really did not like about FL when I transitioned to it was the way it works with audio. So I am not a huge fan of manipulating and editing or working with audio inside of FL, just because it is extremely different and far more complicated. If I'm gonna say this, if I'm gonna keep it a buck, it's way more complicated in FL than it is in any DAW. So in Logic, in Pro Tools, in Reason, I would probably even say like Ableton or whatever. Like we could even throw Reaper in there. Working with audio in FL is way more complicated than it really needs to be. To be honest, one of the things that I missed the most about Reason was the way Reason worked with audio and how you could easily chop it up, truncate it, quantize it, all of that stuff. It was super quick, super simple. I was able to like flip and chop up samples in no time. But in FL, it's like a drag. So I guess that's as far as like the bad things. So like the good things, there's a lot of great things about FL that have definitely helped me become a better producer. I'm gonna start out with the best thing, right? The best thing is definitely the piano roll, because the piano roll gives you this. You have the highlighted scales. With this, it gives you the ability, so like you'll kind of notice that in the background here, it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see how like some of the keys or some of the notes, the streaks are like grayed out, and some of them are darker than the others. So the ones that are not gray, so the ones that are lighter pretty much, are all the notes that you can hit that are within whatever scale you just picked, whatever highlighted scale. So right now it's set to E major. So this means that any of these notes that are really light are in the E major scale, and that I can hit them, and that'll help me to keep my beat or my melody in key or in tune. I have never seen another DAW that has that. Now there are tricks and ways that you can kind of create something like this. Obviously, like with using ghost notes, because ghost notes is present in other DAWs. You could create a way to be able to highlight all the scales that would make it pretty easy for you to, you know, create your melodies. But FL has it like built in, and it's so amazing. The other thing is the effects. I will say that like FL probably has some of the best effects, stock effects that I've ever used in any other DAW. Probably second to Logic. Logic had a lot of really good stock stuff that would help you get started, and you really wouldn't need to invest or buy or spend loads of money on other plugins. Probably one of my favorites being the Parametric EQ2. This thing is just, it's great because it gives you the visuals, but not only does it give you the visuals, you can kind of turn on and off any kind of spectrum analyzer, so that way you're kind of, you know, using your ears, and then you can either ignore this and just use this right here, which also gives you the knob, so that you're kind of forced to use your ears more than using your eyes, because you shouldn't mix with your eyes. And they are oftentimes adding lots of new plugins and updates and features. One of the most recent updates that they added 2 new effects, which is this one, the pitch shifter, which this one was really cool, and I kind of did a recent tutorial on this one. And then this one right here, the vintage chorus, which is I also did another tutorial on this one. So like that's a pretty dope thing to be able to have a DAW that you're invested into, that you've already paid for, that is still adding value to it without you having to pay more money for it. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of this stuff was like kind of unannounced. Like they didn't let you know, hey, we added a new effect and stuff like that until after the update has come. So it's kind of a nice surprise knowing that you're going to be getting free updates for life. So you should technically never be out of date, even though I come across a lot of producers who use FL and they're like, oh man, I'm still on FL 15. It's like, dude, why are you still in the Stone Age? Like they're over here like chiseling their melodies into like stone tablets. And then of course, another great thing about FL is the mention of free updates for life. That knowing that I'm saving a couple $100 every single year by not having to update my DAW constantly and forking over money, especially for updates. One thing that really upset me about Reason was that like Reason would force you to pay for updates, and those updates are things that you never asked for. And the things that you are asking for are being ignored. So with FL, I kind of can't have that complaint because they're giving it to us for free. But in the same vein, they're listening to their customer base. So they're giving us the things that we want, and they're surprising us with extra things that even though we didn't ask for, they're really useful. All in all, I would say FL has helped me learn music theory a little bit better. It's helped me to create quicker beats just because of the way that I set my template up. It helps me to be able to create beats with the quickness and to be able to crank out melodies a lot faster. And also the community of FL users, it's vast. I really struggled a lot trying to find other producers, other hip hop producers who used Reason, and unfortunately I ended up finding a lot of them towards the tail end of my time with Reason. But with FL, I mean, FL is so freaking popular that it's hard to not find producers who are not using FL. So that also brings into play that there's like an unlimited amount of resources out there of videos, of tutorials, of mixing guides, of templates geared towards FL users that can help you to grow as a producer and as a musician. Oh, last thing, I forgot to mention one terrible thing about FL. The way FL saves its projects. Let me show you what I mean. So here is a folder that I keep all of my files in. So I'm gonna go into completed beats. So with Reason had this self-contained feature. So it means that if you were working with an audio sample or whatever kind of drum sounds you had dropped in, if they weren't stock sounds, which 99% of the time it's not, Reason, you would click the self-contained sample and it would automatically save all of those files in the directory and like where they were. It would save them automatically inside of your Reason file. With FL, it doesn't do that. So in here, every single beat that I make, I have to make sure that I export, or that I do this like export project data, and I have to save it in a folder, and then I have to make sure that the project file, the FLP, is saved inside of that folder with all the sounds that I use. And then if I don't do that, when I open up my project, it's gonna give me an error. And it's also not gonna tell me, like, I have to remember, where did I get that freaking sample from? Where did I get that clap from? What folder did I get that perk sound from? Most of the times I'm not gonna remember, so it's just gonna end up being lost. That's kind of an annoying thing because it does take time, especially when I'm working with like a loop, or if I exported a sound from like Arcade, because when you hit that export project data, it doesn't do it automatically. It really only does it automatically for like a lot of your drum sample sounds. So it doesn't do it for longer audio files. I don't know why that is. But overall, I'm very happy. I'm glad that I switched over to FL. I'm glad that I stuck with it because there was a time where I was really overwhelmed and really frustrated and I was gonna quit and not gonna try it out. I was gonna go back to Reason, but I'm glad that I stuck with it because I really do feel that it has helped me to make beats quicker, make beats better, and it's opened me up to a community of other producers that I probably otherwise would not have had that common ground with to, you know, be able to collaborate with. And of course, you know what I do after I finish making beats? I head over to BeatStars and I upload them to my beat store so that I can start selling those beats all over the world. If you're interested in selling your beats and turning your passion into a profit, head on over to BeatStars, use the link in my description, and if you use my code CRU230, I'm gonna hook you up with your first month of BeatStars completely for free. And if you're an FL user, drop a comment and let me know what your favorite feature of FL Studio is, or let me know how long you've been using FL for. Outside of that, it's your boy Mr. Cruz, out.